Good morning. I hope you can hear me and see me. My name is Gabriele Pesce, and I'm the Director of Innovation and Sustainable Finance at Power, the European Association for District Heating and Cooling. And today I will moderate this second episode of this webinar series entitled Beyond the Horizon. As you can see from the slide, today we're going to dedicate this episode to the Innovation Fund. The idea of this the webinar series is to give attendee some insight and some tips and personal experience for some of our members that had experience in some funding programs beyond the horizon. The horizon is the Horizon Europe, because probably as for my experience, 90% of our member submit project in the context of this very famous Horizon Europe funding program. But of course, there's plenty of different funding programs from the EU, and they're very useful. And probably they are a little bit overlooked, or people don't submit project in this kind of funding program because they're scared, they don't know how to do it. So the aim and target of today is to give you some tips and really some information about this Innovation Fund. Innovation Fund is one of the newest, let's say, even though it's not anymore new, funding program at EU level. The program, you will see, tends to finance very innovative ideas and technology. And basically, the amount of funding is quite relevant. To explain all this, today we have here Amy Radlberger from Wien Energie. She's a EU funding expert, and she has a very good experience in Innovation Fund, as you will see. I will be the moderator, and basically the webinar will last around 1 hour, around until 11, and it's been recorded. Don't worry, everything will be posted on our Power YouTube channel, so you can retrieve all the slides and the information that we're going to discuss today. So without any further ado, I will give the floor to Amy. She will introduce herself, and she can start with her presentation. Thank you, Amy. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much from my side, and good morning from sunny Vienna. I'm just going to start by telling you why I'm presenting today, I would say. So I've been working on EU funding schemes for about 20 years now. I'm originally from Wales, and I was in Brussels for a long time working for the National Contact Point, for then FP7. And I've also been working for the University of Vienna for 10 years. And I switched in 2022 because the Wiener Stadtwerke, which is the main municipal company of Vienna, wanted to establish a competence centre for EU funding. And this means that we support all of our kind of holding-wide projects with their EU funding applications, and I am specifically responsible for energy. Last year, we applied for the Innovation Fund for the first time, so today I'm going to really give you some tips that you can't read. I will start by introducing the programme very briefly, but I really want to share with you information that you can't read about and give you my experience. What I will say about the Innovation Fund, you can forget, if you've got experience in EU funding, just forget everything you've ever learned. It's quite a different beast, as we say in English, and you need to approach it differently to other EU funding applications. They're very large, the applications, but I have to say, although we weren't successful by half a point, basically it was a tremendous experience for me, and it gave me, it put me in a different mindset when tackling this EU funding scheme. So although for about a month after I couldn't even talk about EU funding anymore, it was, now I look back and I think that we learned so much from it, and I can definitely recommend applying for the Innovation Fund. So
I mean, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry. The EU Innovation Fund is actually funded by the Emissions Trading Scheme. So it has a focus on CO2 avoidance. It focuses on first of its kind, highly innovative flagship projects, and it really funds the pre-commercial demonstration of large-scale infrastructure projects. Although, I mean, officially, it funds activities which are Annex 1 and Annex 2 of the EU ETS directive. But I would also recommend that if you think that your area, you don't know if it's in scope or out of scope, then just check with your national contact points or also with the Commission help desk. This current call that's currently open, that was published in November, sees kind of a new schemes and also a new style of calls for the Innovation Fund. I mean, before there were two main calls, so in spring and then in autumn, but in November they called all schemes together, apart from the hydrogen bank ones, and this will remain so. So we can anticipate a new call with all the schemes in October of this year. There are different project sizes. So we have small scale, medium scale, large scale, and pilots. Pilots were introduced last year. And you can have a maximum funding of 40 million. You can get up to 60% of your relevant costs funded. So normally with EU funding, it is so that with Horizon Europe, you have your costs, your total costs, and then if you're in industry, then you get 70% funded of these costs, or if you're in research or a public body, you get 100. Yeah, it's slightly different with the Innovation Fund. So these are the relevant costs. So it's 60% of the extra costs that are borne by the projects as a result of the application of the innovative technology. So it's the additional cost because you're implementing this additional technology. So this is really important to remember. It's not 60% of the whole direct costs, 60% of the relevant costs. And your calculation of the relevant costs will become, that you have specific tools, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. What is really attractive about the scheme, certainly for us, is that you can apply alone. You don't have to have a large consortium as you do with other EU funding schemes. The TRL levels, the technology readiness levels, if you work with these, are about 8 to 9. So really kind of going beyond really early stage demonstration projects, except for the pilots, where the TRL levels are rather 6 to 7. And here is the link. I've provided the link here so you can have a look for yourself what the program is about. And the current call deadline is the 9th of April. And personally, I would say that you would rather be looking at the next calls in autumn right now. But yeah, just to let you know, that's my own personal opinion. The project length is also very long, from 3 to 14 years. What sets it apart as well from other EU funding schemes is that you are funded during the entry into operations. OPEX costs are also eligible. It's important to determine your financial close. So this you have to close financially within 2 to 4 years, depending on the scheme. So 2, I think, is pilots, and the 4 years is the classical schemes. And you have to operate the plant for a minimum of 3 to 10 years. So if you have like a one-off test that then doesn't go into operation, then you can't have it funded by the Innovation Fund. And this is also extremely important to remember. These are the evaluation criteria, again, different to classical Horizon Europe projects, because you have to calculate the greenhouse gas emission avoidance potential. Cost efficiency is a specific tool that you have to use to calculate this. And there are 2 others, project maturity and replication, which was different from the last calls. This is a new criteria. They were it was more about the scaling up of the project, and this time they've changed it to replication. I'm not going to go into detail today, but I wanted to also give you just an example of a project that has been funded by the Innovation Fund, so you can actually get a feel for what could be funded. So this is the Evolute project, which aims to provide Bavaria with district heating and electricity through their Innovation Fund project. It's a geothermal project. So I would just recommend that you have a look at this just to give yourselves a good idea and a good feel of what can be funded through the Innovation Fund. But in general, I will say, from what I have seen, and I've looked at the projects, there are very few district heating and cooling projects with the Innovation Fund, and in general with geothermal energy projects. So I'd also like to say very early on, I think it would be really great if we could get more projects being submitted from our sector, and that's it. That is, of course, one of the aims of this workshop. So getting started, how do you get started with an Innovation Fund application? So I'm not sure how many people have submitted European project applications before, but everything happens via this funding and tenders portal. All the projects are called via this funding tenders portal, and if you're successful, you'll manage your project via this funding and tenders portal. And one of my first recommendations then is really to make sure your organization is registered on the portal. The validation process of an organization can last a little bit, and you have to provide various documents for the validation services. So even if you're thinking about applying for EU funding, or then I would just register now anyway, even if you don't end up submitting, because you're ready to go and there's no stress before a deadline that you haven't registered or you haven't been validated. You can apply without being validated, but I think everything's much simpler if you're prepared well in advance. I've said it already this morning, I think it's really important that you get a feeling for the program. These projects are very different to probably what you're used to. And also the evaluation is slightly different also to probably what you're used to if you've been submitting Horizon Europe projects. The CINEA and DG Climate organise really, really great information days. And I personally think that they're a real lighthouse for how all information days should be. So they're extremely active, kind of interactive. They take you through the key points, very personal. And so I would really recommend that you have a look at the information day. Then you can get an idea what is required for you. They really go through what you have to do, where, and there's the recording online and also the presentation. So to have a look at that. Also, I can recommend talking to project managers of successful Innovation Fund projects. With the first call of the Innovation Fund, there was a 1% success rate. And I think sometimes in some circles, it hasn't really recovered from that, because when I try and promote the program, sometimes I hear, yeah, but the success rates are so low. Of course, with EU funding, first calls are always oversubscribed. And a lot has changed since then. Evaluation criteria have been adapted, and they have tried to simplify the program where they can. So talk to project managers who have the experience of applying and have the experience of implementing Innovation Fund projects, and inform yourself, because you will get different views, and they might give you some really good tips as well about how they approached it. Consult the list of successful projects. There is a dashboard which you can use then to locate all the projects that have been funded so far. CINEA and the European Commission provide lesson learned documents and analyses of all the calls. So these are also worth having a look through. For example, I learned, so we failed on the financial maturity part, and last year apparently 40% of projects failed at the financial maturity part. And this information is really important, because then you know, okay, I've probably got to start with this area of the application form. The Commission and CINEA are very often at national information days. At the Austrian one, they were available, extremely open and friendly. And I would also recommend that you make use of these just to talk through your project ideas. Go with a list of projects and talk through them if they might be eligible or not, what might be eligible, what not, what might need to be tweaked. They're very open and happy to provide you with their views on a possible innovation fund program. And so I'd very much recommend that you do that. The innovation fund is extremely flexible in itself, and it responds to policy developments at EU level very quickly. So, for example, this year in this year's program, for the first time, buildings are eligible, mobility projects, and also maritime, because they're also now covered by the ETS. But also, I would say in future, batteries. You might see batteries calls because there's a number of policies that have just been published. Perhaps also photovoltaic. Clean manufacturing is also part of this year's call. So you need to keep informed of what is happening at EU level, because this will inform the calls, and also you will have to write about it in your application. What we did, and this was extremely useful, so the projects have to be mature, both technically and also financially. So some of the so in the early stages, when we were looking at some of the technological problems that could occur during the implementation of the project, we actually used national funding and EU funding just to iron out those problems to begin with. We also obtained ELENA funding from the EIB to do some preparatory work. This is a great scheme. District heating is a main priority for the EIB, and it funds preparation costs of large-scale investment projects, up to 90% cost. So I'd recommend having a look at that. So we have used different forms of funding prior to the Innovation Fund project to basically prepare for it, I would say. Important to note, perhaps, is that only one proposal can be submitted to each of the topics that I showed on the first slide. Also important information for you, the European Commission announced last week that there'll be a front loading of the Innovation Fund budget. This means that in the next few years, a lot of the budget will be used up. If you're familiar with the CEF Transport program, this is exactly what happened. In the first 3 years of the program, the budget was allocated, and this is now what they will do with the Innovation Fund. So if you have projects, then I'd recommend that you submit them as soon as possible. How to start the application. So it may seem basic, but I would really recommend reading the call text and the guidance documents and rereading them. I'm going to show you an example why in a moment. But you have to follow the guidance word by word. You have to, it's actually an extremely logical program. And the Commission tells you exactly what they want you to write, and they want you to calculate, and how they want you to calculate it. So it's super important to know everything that you need to include in the application, and therefore be really familiar with all of the documents. If you have applied in the past and you're looking to resubmit this year, there have been some changes to the call this year. So please do reread those documents, because, as I said, it has changed. The template has changed as well, only slightly, but nevertheless, there are changes there. Register in the portal early, because when the call opened about a month later, there were some changes to the documents. So register early and you'll get information on what has changed, in case they've updated the guidance or provided clarification on an issue. So that's also really important. And once you have a feeling for what's involved, identify your weak spots at the beginning and work on those first, because they're probably going to take longer. As I said, financial maturity is extremely important, and you need to have a business case already in place, I would say. So you need to make sure that aligns itself with what you need to provide for the financial maturity. Plus, you have to provide evidence that this project is financially sound. So try to tackle the kind of really hard and important issues first with your application, because they are going to last probably a bit longer until you can make them perfect for the application. And I wanted to give you an example about why you should read the call text really carefully. Also, important to note is that with the Innovation Fund, it's really important that the annexes are really important. It's not just the normal part A, B, and C, which we're all used to with European funding schemes. The annexes are probably more important than the main application form. And actually 80% of proposals fail at the admission and eligibility stage because they are incomplete. So, for example, you have applicants have not included the correct budget table or cost calculator, etc. So it's so important that you go through that list and familiarize yourself with what is requested. On the right, you'll see a passage from the call text on the business plan, and I can tell you that that you need to include everything that is stated here. As you can see, there's a lot of different requests that they ask of you to prove the financial viability of your project. And this is so important. You need to really go through this text and make sure that you're able to provide this evidence. The evaluators themselves, I have the feeling, I think you have to approach it so that the evaluators really understand your budget, and you have to explain absolutely everything. So if your cost calculations are really clear for you, you need to then make it really, really clear for the evaluator how you have developed your business case. So ideally, in an ideal world, I would recommend that you start at least 6 months before the deadline. The beauty of the Innovation Fund is that although there are small changes every year, the template itself doesn't really change that much, and the calls are always the same pretty much, which is really good for our sector, because obviously it takes a long time to prepare these projects, and therefore you have enough time so you can even, I mean, we're starting to prepare for the next call, and you could also start preparing for the call in 2 years. That's the beauty of the Innovation Fund, I would say. But as a minimum, I would say 6 months before the submission deadline, because you need that time. Our project application was 320 pages. I heard from other applicants, their project application reached over 400 pages. It is a lot. I won't deny it. It is a lot, but it is doable. And if you have all the preparatory documents ready, very often it's just a question of inserting the text. And this is also naturally why I recommend starting very early. You will need a team of people. You can't submit this application with just 1 or 2 people. And you need to. It's almost like a project in itself. At the very beginning of the project application phase, I'd recommend that you define who's responsible for what, deadlines for providing the information, so everybody's very clear what is needed. For application, we had about 10 to 20 people working on it, and it really is across the board. So our economists are looking at the financial element to it, communication parts. There's a knowledge sharing plan you have to produce that's very large, and it's how you're going to communicate, not only really how you're going to communicate the project, but also in terms of replication and outreach as well. The project managers are naturally involved. If you're for the sections on EU policy, you might want to involve your public affairs department. So it's really cross-sectorial within your own organization. And so it's really important you get that team together right at the beginning of the application process. Inform your national contact point and ministry early. The Austrian ministry and national contact point are really supportive. The national contact point organised a fantastic information day in January. The commission were there and we had some really great presentations, and they help us as much as they can. And also the ministry, extremely supportive. So keep in touch with them early on, and I'm sure they'll be able to support you as best they can. You will need to provide letters of support and really think carefully about the letters themselves, because the evaluators will look at them and comment on them. So if the whole project is also getting funding for the implementation phase, you'll need to have letters from the funders, or if there's private investment, then also letters from these investors. Off-takers, so who will perhaps use your product in the future, who might this be relevant for, also from your ministries, showing that they actually support the project. Think about international organizations, potential replicators, for example, if you are from a city, then think about asking other cities to provide you with letters of support. And very importantly, if you are part of a group, then make sure that your shareholders and holding companies also provide letters of support. I cannot stress enough how important these letters of support are for your application. So how do you go about preparing the proposal? So your business plan and your feasibility study should already be in place. This I think is a prerequisite, because essentially you'll use the information in both documents to populate your application form. I've already said it, but I'll say it again. Follow the guidance. Don't try and use your own cost calculations that you normally use internally. There is a cost calculation that is provided as part of the call. You must use it. And also read through there's a separate guidance document on calculating the costs. And in here, they inform you about which formulas you should use, and this has to be used. You cannot deviate. There are some small exceptions where you could deviate, but they have to be justified. But I would just recommend follow exactly what is asked of you. Budget table, very different to normal European funding proposals. Our economists have to fill this out for us because there are lots of business terms. So you have to make sure that internally that is possible for you. There is a functional mailbox from Cinea, and they try to, well, they do very well answer all of the questions that come in, but don't forget, about a month before the deadline, they're unable to respond anymore because they have so many queries that they're dealing with. So if you need anything clarified from Cinea, then make sure you contact the functional mailbox very, very early to ensure you get a response by the time the project goes in. And the last point is a mistake that I really made with the Innovation Fund. I was working in academia for a very long time for EU funding in academia. And I was very used to ERC projects, which are very, very fundamental research based, looking at scientific papers, etc. It is a bit different. So whilst I recommend have lots of different colleagues and peers from different sectors read the proposal to make sure they understand it, and that is a basic rule of EU funding applications, it's not a Horizon Europe proposal. So you will be citing, but you won't be citing like a scientific paper. One mistake I also made was with some of our projects. I overestimated how innovative these projects should be. Of course, it is the Innovation Fund and they need to be innovative, but the definition of innovative might be different to what you actually are used to. So I did tell one project manager that I thought his project was not innovative enough, the Innovation Fund, And then we had a meeting as part of our information day, and the Commission and SENEA clarified it was innovative enough because this project would be applied in a new environment. So yeah, this is again really important why you should clarify with already face-to-face at national events if that project is innovative. I said it already, 40% of applications fail due to the financial maturity. So really spend time on getting this correct. Familiarize yourself, talk to your internally to your financial departments, your economists, and work together on getting the calculations right, and including lots and lots of, you should be writing a lot of information about your business case and how any gaps are going to be covered. That's extremely important. For some of you, the covering of the remaining costs will probably be easier to justify than others. If you're, for example, a public body, don't worry. You can, and if there will be a deficit of the project, or the project's not going to make huge amounts of profits. Some sectors find that easier than others. It's okay, but just justify everything in your proposal. Just be very honest and clear about your business model, and how the Commission just want to make sure that you have enough financing to cover the additional costs, and this project will actually be implemented. Bear that in mind when you're writing this section. Consistency is also key. I have to say, perhaps a don't from my side on the last day. You can submit as often as you want, as normal with European projects, but European project applications. But yeah, I mean, right up on the last day, we had a little team of people reading all the documents to try and make sure they were consistent and typos, etc. And we still found things that needed to be changed. Kind of figures that we used somewhere and they weren't the same in the other document. And these things, I mean, if you're experienced in European funding, you know that it annoys evaluators. Plus, it leads the evaluators to think that your project isn't credible. So don't do what I did and do most of it on the last day. Try and do it kind of a week or two in advance, or do it as you're going along, I would say. Explain everything fully. With normal, I don't think it's at this level. I normally tell our project applications, imagine that your grandma is reading this application and she needs to understand. Of course, that's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but you need to ensure that it's very clear for everybody reading that proposal what is happening, how how it's financially viable, and so just write it clearly for everybody so they understand. Also, English proofreading. It just makes it easier for everybody if the project is easy to read in English. So I'd recommend either getting somebody external to have a look through for you, or hopefully in your teams there are people with proficient English that can actually just have a read through for you. So some final remarks from my side. Like I said, it was a steep learning curve for me, but I really learned a lot through the process. So although it is quite, at first glance or first try, I would say it's quite complicated, it's a lot involved, a lot of annexes, a lot of pages, it's a lot of work. It's actually very straightforward, I think, now looking back. You are told exactly what you need to provide everywhere, and you just need to follow it and do it. And after you submit an innovation fund project, I think everything else is much easier. Resubmissions are common, so don't be afraid to fail. Think carefully about your strategy. You might want to kind of apply and then see what comments come back, and then go in with a better proposal in 2 years. Although I have to say it is a lot of work, so you need to think carefully if you're going to apply that strategy. But I think I read somewhere something like 40% of successful projects are resubmission. So don't be afraid to fail, and you will learn a lot from the process, which you can then use to resubmit your project. You can start working now on the 2024 call, which will be published in autumn, and I would actually recommend do that. So you can download all the 2023 templates and guidance and start preparing the application, do a bit of pre-work. Like I said, it's the beauty of the Innovation Fund call that their calls are every year and don't change too much. So it allows us all to plan for future calls. Final plea from my side, a little bit off topic. Please become an evaluator. The quality of EU funding applications can only remain high if we have the experts reading the applications. So there's an open call for evaluators for the Innovation Fund. So I'd really recommend that you register. Everybody can register. Just register, get your CV uploaded, and hopefully you'll be contacted then to have a look through proposals. This will also give you a good insight on what makes a really good EU Innovation Fund project application. And also it will give you a chance to network with your peers. As I mentioned earlier, the Innovation Fund is very flexible program and it responds to policy developments. They state, I think, in the guidance that they'll also look at the project applications from this year, and this will guide perhaps future EU policy directions, which is why it would be good also to try and get more projects from our sector being submitted. But also as an evaluator, then you also have your chance to maybe discuss with the Commission directly some of your thoughts on the funding of our sector and future policy developments which need to happen. I think in general, Gabriele has said this quite a lot from me, but I think we need to have a conversation about gaps in funding for district energy and cooling and keep them going. So please respond to all consultations in this regard. Talk to EU colleagues at brokerage events about the Innovation Fund and also EU funding in general, and respond to consultations. And that was it from my side. Please don't hesitate to contact me or follow me on LinkedIn. Looking forward to questions.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. I think, by the way, I can't agree more about the last slide, of course. This is what in European Power we try to do every day. Thank you to remind people about that. We need more funding for heating and cooling in general, for this energy, that also to keep the quality of your funding as high as possible. Amy, your presentation was really, really, really insightful. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for, and I hope the attendee found it as useful as I did. For all the attendees, there is a Q&A box below in your Zoom application. So I see there are already a couple of questions. So I will prioritize questions from the audience, even though I have some questions for you also, Amy. But please use this opportunity to ask as much as possible question to this. Amy is a very a real expert on EU funding, so you have this opportunity. So the first question comes from Jonas Wilke. Can you explain a bit more on what the relevant costs are? Can you give an example on which costs typically are relevant?
I sadly can't. I could follow up with an email because actually the financial part of it was dealt with our economics department. So I didn't really get involved in that part. Yeah, and also it very much depends. They have this calculation tool which you fill in and it calculates all the different costs for you. So you just enter the information. So it really depends on your project. So sorry, I can't provide an answer on that.
Yeah, so there's no fixed kind of cost. It's more this tool that calculate the relevance of this cost, and you need real experts to do that, right? This is the message probably you want to deliver to Jonas. Yeah. Okay.
What I will say, maybe this helps a little bit. So from our total direct costs, in the end, the relevant costs ended up being about 30% of the total direct costs. Okay. 25-30%. But yeah, that's the key message, that it's not your classic EU budget. It's as if you are pitching for an investor. So
Thank you, Amy. Anyway, it's useful also to know that. We have an anonymous attendee. You can also, if you're shy, you can of course also ask question anonymously, so don't worry. How did the program funding in terms of amount, euro, compare to the application investment? 10, 20 people, more than 6 months. I guess it is worth the effort.
Yeah, this is a really good question. I find the Innovation Fund one of a kind funding, so to say. You know, there's very little funding for our energy infrastructure projects. It's either CEF, which normally you have to be on this PCI list, and then the Innovation Fund. So, although it's a lot of work for many of us, it's our only chance of getting large-scale energy infrastructure funded, especially if it's kind of risky in some way, first of its kind. So in that sense, it always pays off. There are massive discussions about the small scale call because there are some differences, but essentially the application is pretty much the same. There have been less submissions. The Commission have tried to increase lessen the burden, and also the maximum funding has been increased this year to, capex costs have been increased to 20 million. So let's see how this call goes. The issue with the small scale call is that the funding rates are slightly higher than the main calls where you can actually apply for over 100 million euros. Of course, that's oversubscribed. So you have to trade off, I think, how important that project is to you. If there's no other chance of funding, I still recommend personally internally to go for small scale projects or medium scale projects, because I think still it's worth it. I've spoken to project applicants who have submitted to the small scale call, and even the application process, the importance of the project outweighed the application process. So that's how I see it. But I understand the concerns.
Yes, I mean, waiting for other question. I have some questions for you.
Okay.
That probably is directly linked to this last question we got. So basically, as you said, it's completely another beast. Most of our, I guess, here are quite used to Horizon Europe. It's totally another dimension. And could be, in your opinion, this a little bit scary for innovators?
Yeah.
Okay. And so anyway, you say it's worth the effort. But if do you think this kind of program, Innovation Fund, is suitable just for medium, big size organization, or also small organization can try into this? What's your opinion?
That's a really good question as well. Difficult one. I don't think if you're an SME, for example, I know that this is kind of being discussed involving SMEs. I think you can consider hiring. There are a lot of consultants offering to prepare the proposal and manage the project for you, so you can do your own research and find out who the good ones are. So I think in any case, you would probably, as an SME, need to do that. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's obviously, if this project is super important and it fits all the criteria and you actually have all the information, you have a really sound business case and a feasibility study, then why not? But you will need to get additional support in, I think, to enable you to submit that application and manage the project.
So let's say basically hiring a consultancy for small, medium organization is quite not obligatory, but very highly suggested, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some really good consultants working with a lot of experience. We have really positive experience with this. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't, think really carefully at the beginning about your internal resources. I really stick by, you need 10 to 20 people working on it, and you need to then outsource if you haven't got that enough staff to help you.
Yeah. I understand. I understand. Also, I would like to remind here the audience that even though basically the investment of the preparation and the submission is quite high compared to the Horizon Europe, for example, is also worth to mention the fact that funding is much higher because you can also submit by your own, so you don't have to split the funding to say among 28 partners, and you just get a couple of hundreds of thousands of euro. You can get by just for you millions of euros. So basically, this counterbalance a little bit the big investment you did before. So, no, do you agree with me, Amy? I think this is a little bit the, I'll say, the other side of the medal, let's say, in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like these sums are huge, and the sectors they cover are also our sector, basically. So if you have a suitable project, why not? Yeah, some of the projects getting over 100 million euros in funding. The medium scale is kind of from 20 to 100, and then even the small scale 2.5 to 20. These are really large sums, and it's very rare to get that from a funding scheme, both nationally and also at EU level.
So you mentioned sector. So this is more a broad and more, I say, policy-related question, but also linked to your last slide. Do you think that heating sector is a little bit underrepresented in the Innovation Fund? And do you think we should have a dedicated, say, subsection in the Innovation Fund for heating? Because we see that there is storage, renewable, if I'm not wrong, energy efficiency in general. So, but the heating is everywhere and nowhere, basically. And as we all know that heating represents a lot of consumption of energy. So, would you suggest, as we do, to the Commission to slightly reform the Innovation Fund, even though, of course, is built and designed on the ETS, but to dedicate really a sector to just heating and cooling? I'm not saying just this heating and cooling. I don't want to be so partial, even though I wish, but of course I want also to be realistic, but just for heating and cooling. So what do you think? I think it's feasible, should be done.
I would always say it should be done because this is our sector. So and I personally feel it's underrepresented. So I've been through all the project lists, and I can't find that many examples, but perhaps the Commission could provide us with better examples. But certainly from what I've seen, I feel that it's underrepresented. One thing I will say, if you're worried about the greenhouse gas emission avoidance, so classically our projects don't. If you think classically our projects don't have to, it's difficult for us to demonstrate this. Just bear in mind that the Commission relaxed the rules so that energy storage projects could also compete with the and also comply with the greenhouse gas emissions avoidance. So the rules have been basically loosened a little bit. But what I will say is that we as a sector have to demonstrate that the need is there. So if we're not, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, I guess. We all need to apply. I know it's easy for me to say this, but we need to demonstrate that we have these great projects, which we do, and they just need they need funding. Then why not? And if we could maybe gather experience from our sector applications about what didn't work, what did work, then again that will give us a strong case for either our own sector, or even within the Innovation Fund, or even a loosening further of the rules for us.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's really a virtuous circle, because as I always repeat, we need to give the Commission I would say the proof, the evidence that this heating and cooling sector is quite innovative. So we deserve funding to increase this innovation. So if we never submit, if we never demonstrate the potential of innovation, the innovation potential of this heating and cooling, probably the Commission will find something else, because they deem more, say, worth of funding for, say heat pumps or power sector. Okay, we have another question from Jonas. So how would you describe the process after a successful application to the Innovation Fund? How much work do you have to put into reports, proof to actually get funding? So basically, yeah, what happened if we are so great to be successful and granted?
Well, we weren't successful, but I have obviously asked about how it works. So what I understand is then once you're successful, I think the grant agreement preparation process is is quite intensive. So as I've understood, and also there everything, all your costs need to be audited prior to the project starting. So there's a very different process, I think, to other EU funding schemes. So they need to be kind of looked at the start by I think an external auditor. Yeah, so I think you have, from what I've learned, you have to be extremely, it's just the beginning when you get the funding, and you have to then have a good project management and team in place. Perhaps just a recommendation from my side, work closely with your auditors, perhaps have a framework contract with an auditor just to kind of get advice on running the project. But like I said at the very beginning, talk to the project managers. So that's what I did after the very first call. I had conversations with the very few successful projects, and all the projects were so helpful and gave me their views on what they did and how they approached it. And I think the same goes also for the project management side of things. Just if you're worried about that, ask a couple of the successful applicants to just talk you through the process. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. So as a practical example, for example, we said this heating and cooling is a little bit underrepresented, but for example, if I'm not wrong, your project was about this heating and cooling. Am I wrong? Or yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, it wasn't submitted for half a point, you said. So
yeah,
basically, it was really, really maybe we needed some fine tuning. So can you explain what it was about without sharing too much confidential information, but just to give an example of what kind of innovation you can finance? So what was about your project?
Yeah. So our project was about an underground thermal storage, and obviously being in a city, our possibilities of storage due to space constrictions are extremely we're extremely confined, and there are also very strict rules within Vienna, and rightly so, about building and the environment. So that was basically it in a nutshell. Obviously, it's connected to the district heating system. Where we failed, I can actually say that it was really, we missed a few documents that were in the call text, like one document, and also the financial maturity, not explaining clearly enough. Obviously, as a municipal company, we have different business models to, for example, large steel companies or large chemical companies. But we just did not explain that properly. And now, and this is why I kind of said so many times, read through everything, explain, don't think that the evaluator comes from your specific area, especially because there are less heating and cooling projects, then even more so we have to kind of push harder in our applications to demonstrate why we need to be funded, and also our financial models.
Thank you. I mean, it was really a pity, but I hope you will submit it in the future. I don't know if you're preparing something for April. Anyway, okay. I don't know if someone is submitting project for April deadline. We are here to support you, and you can say contact Amy directly by email if you want some, or say some tips. But of course, I repeat, as Amy said, the national contact point, the Commission is really, really eager to support you. So don't underestimate the kind of support you can have from dedicated agency, dedicated national point from your country. They are very, very useful. They really can support you because Innovation Fund, it's quite a big monster, but it is worth it. If you want to submit something in autumn, start now. You don't need to find tons of partners. You can be also alone. If your idea is worth it, give a try. Because of course, if you never start, you will never learn how to do it. And in this coming years, there are a lot of experience for other submitters. So also the Commission knows which kind of aspect could be improved and in which kind of aspect you should be supported the most. So, I mean, just a really last question before closing the webinar. So if you need to condense to a really newbie in the Innovation Fund, 3 words, the main aspect that you really need to look.
3 words: read, and that includes guidance, projects, talk to successful project applicants, talk to the Commission. Just to come back to the previous point, we were also a bit concerned as a municipal company with heating projects that it wouldn't fit with the Innovation Fund, but we talked face to face with Tanea at the information days, and they set our mind and go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Thank you. Okay, so I hope you found Amy's presentation useful. For me, it was. And you can, I repeat, you can find the recording of this webinar in our Euritem Power YouTube channel. A last information is something else. We opened the registration for the Congress, so you might meet Amy in person. I hope you can, Amy, in Rotterdam, the first week of June. All the DC heat and cooling community in Europe will be there. So it's the best way to really network and sharing your experience, and hopefully also to, I would say, attend as most session as possible. So really go in our dedicated website, register. It's gonna be really, I think, the most attended Congress in Euritem Power history. So our number is skyrocketing every year. So we are really happy about that. Thank you again, Amy. We're gonna have probably another episode in March. We're gonna explore other funding programs. Stay tuned in our communication channel. So I thank you for attending this webinar and see you soon. Have a great day. Thank you again, Amy. Bye.
Thank you.